Hey there, interwebs! Welcome to 2025, and welcome back to How Fascinating, where long-term viewers already know that the start of a new year means a new weird animal facts video. This year we'll be studying the seahorse, also known as the hippocampus, meaning equine sea monster in ancient Greek, and known in Japanese as Tatsuno Otoshigo, meaning the dragon's bastard child. So strap in for one heck of a ride as we explore the truly fascinating anatomy of the seahorse. Right off the bat, it's obvious that these strange creatures get the name seahorse, and hippocampus, from the unusual shape of their head, and its equine appearance derives in part from the presence of a clearly defined neck. Seahorses are perhaps the only fish in the sea with the latter feature. For contrast, just take a look at the ocean sunfish, or mola mola, and tell me where the neck is on that thing. That's what I thought. This feature is also correlated to another unique aspect of the seahorse, their posture. Perhaps the strangest thing about the seahorse, and the feature from which many of their other eccentricities derive, is their upright posture. They are the only fish to swim upright, and so I, as a human, the only extant species of upright primate, feel an odd sort of kinship with these hippocephalic little weirdos. And before all of the armchair ichthyologists pile on me in the comments, yes, I know razorfish and shrimpfish also swim in a vertical orientation, but they swim head downwards. In heraldry, this posture or attitude would be blazoned urinant, from the Latin word urinans, meaning dive, which is also why a 17th century word for a diver was a urinator, but I digress. Your standard fish-shaped fish propels itself principally with its pectoral, ventral, and/or caudal fins, but the gross morphology and direct posture of the seahorse obviously preclude this. Instead, a seahorse propels itself by fluttering its dorsal fin. Now, I don't know about you, but the word I'd pick for a dorsal appendage used for locomotion through a fluid medium is wing, and it's worth noting that the ancient Greek word pteryx can refer in biology to wings or fins, with the latter being found in the class of fish Actinopterygii, meaning ray fins. Furthermore, the rayed nature of seahorse dorsal fins make them look a little like bat wings, in my opinion, which also gives them a slightly draconic flair. Speaking of fins, most normal fish also have what's known as a caudal fin, which is what you probably think of when you hear the term fishtail. It's such a standard feature of marine vertebrates that marine mammals such as cetaceans and sirenians have even evolved their own versions, albeit in the horizontal plane, as have prehistoric marine reptiles like Ichthyosaurus. But not seahorses. Seahorses said forget that nonsense and evolved a prehensile tail like New World spider monkeys, opossums, and chameleons, and rather than use it for getting around, they use it to stay put, clinging onto the coral reefs they call home. If you look really closely, you might also notice that these tails are square in cross-section, which makes them even stranger. Or perhaps I should say, stronger. Although a square isn't as crush-resistant as a circle, this shape actually provides more protection to the vertebral column through controlled deformation. Think of it like crumple zones, but it's your spine. The flat sides also provide more surface area for gripping onto their coral perches, ensuring that they don't get swept away by the current. This is good, because honestly, they're kinda terrible swimmers. In fact, due to the lackluster flapping power of its dorsal wing, the dwarf seahorse Hippocampus zosteri is the slowest fish alive, with a top speed of roughly 5 feet or 1.5 meters per hour. You know what? I'm gonna say it's the slowest fish, period, because I've seen dead fish float downstream faster than that. The other, and perhaps more obvious, feature which contributes to the seahorse's resemblance to the land horse is its elongated snorkel-like snout. This is formed from the fusion of their upper and lower jaws, and it's where the biological family gets its scientific name, Sygnathidae, which literally means joined jaw in Greek. The same prefix can also be spotted on the word syndactyly, referring to the condition wherein 2 or more digits are fused together, like we see on chameleons' little grabbies. I bring it up because 2 years ago I told you that if cats were bears, they'd be pandas, and today I'm telling you that if chameleons were fish, they'd be seahorses. In addition to their aforementioned prehensile tails, both the seahorse and the chameleon also have large bulbous eyes which they can swivel and move independently, a feature useful in both prey capture and not becoming prey oneself. Another adaptation which facilitates not getting eaten is camouflage. Seahorses are masters of the craft, with even experienced divers and marine biologists needing a moment or two to notice a seahorse hiding in the coral less than a meter in front of them. As for chameleons, their very name has become a byword for someone or something that can adapt to blend in anywhere, even though their famous color-changing ability isn't used for that. Both animals have to be good at hiding because they're so slow. The chameleon was even used as an example of a slow thing in classical illustrations of the Latin expression festina lente, meaning make haste slowly. One thing which the seahorse doesn't have in common with the monkey frog is scales, which seems like a pretty major anatomical omission for a fish. In this way, they're more like amphibians, e.g. true frogs, which are distinguished from other tetrapods by, among other features, a lack of keratinized skin. This means that no amphibian has fur, feathers, or scales like you'd find on mammals, birds, and reptiles. Frogs also don't have ribs, they'd break them with all their leaping belly flops if they did, and neither do seahorses. Instead, the latter have a set of bony plates located just under the skin, arranged in rings throughout their bodies. In the absence of scales, these subdermal plates are the closest thing they've got to armor, and they're similar, but not identical, to osteoderms, the bony plates found in the skin of armadillos, certain frogs, and goddamn crocodilians, which are probably tied with Komodo dragons, for being the closest things we've got to dragons in real life. And now I want to know what a seahorse dracolich would look like. But wait, they get weirder. Seahorses' bulbous chameleon eyes are bigger than their stomach, because they have no stomach. This is a trait, or lack thereof, which they share with the kings of the weird animal kingdom, the monotremes, platypuses and echidnas. If you're wondering how an animal can survive without a stomach, it might help to know that the absorption of nutrients from food actually occurs in the intestines. The stomach is basically just a bag of acid and enzymes that breaks the food down into a more easily digested paste. Useful, but not essential. As a result, seahorses are almost constantly feeding in order to take in enough nutrients to stay alive. Another element of the alimentary canal which both monotremes and seahorses lack is teeth. As mentioned earlier, their jaws are fused, making mastication impossible. Because you can't chew with a snorkel for a face, seahorses instead use a method of prey capture known as pivot feeding. Now, imagine if you will, an ambush predator. If you're anything like me, you're probably picturing a crocodile or alligator, but seahorses are also ambush predators. What's more, they're frighteningly good at it too, with up to a whopping 80% success rate when hunting in areas of high-density vegetation. For contrast, American alligators only have about a 50% success rate, although good data on the species are hard to find, as do great white sharks. Leopards and peregrine falcons, high-level predators of the land and skies, have roughly 35 and 45% success rates, respectively. Also, for what it's worth, Wikipedia's current page image for hunting success is a chameleon. Given that both animals are well-camouflaged, slow-moving, cold-blooded vertebrates with swiveling eyes and prehensile tails who feed using a method, they really ought to be called sea chameleons instead. Certain species of each family are also roughly the same size, whereas no seahorse is anywhere near as big as a land horse. Lastly, I'd like to mention the weirdest feature of this weird-ass creature, which you've probably been yelling at your screen this entire time: reproduction. Unlike most ray-finned bony fishes, seahorses are ovoviviparous. Although this term is falling out of favor in scientific literature due to overly broad and/or conflicting definitions, it generally refers to animals which undergo internal fertilization and give live birth, but there is no placental connection, and unborn offspring are nourished by their egg instead. Also, it's your word of the day. Other examples of ovoviviparity in the animal kingdom include select genera of sharks, frogs, and snakes such as vipers, with the latter even taking their name from the process. Unlike all of these animals, however, it is the male seahorses which carry the embryos to term, to the delight of empreg fetishists the world over. It's not exactly clear why this is the case or how it came to be, but it does confer certain benefits from an evolutionary bio perspective. Because sperm is less costly than eggs in terms of biological resources to produce, it allows both parents to better share the proverbial load of child rearing. While the male is carrying the current litter, the female can produce more eggs for the next go-around, which allows both parents to put more energy into reproduction and get more baby seahorses out. Rinse and repeat. In certain species, the males can even carry multiple batches from different female partners at once, increasing genetic diversity and the associated odds of survival. How does this actually work from a physiological perspective, you may be wondering? Well, have you ever seen the business end of a wombatina? Yes, the male seahorse has a sort of pouch, an ichthyon marsupium, or fishy man purse, not to be confused with a manly fish purse or a mermaid's purse, which is actually the egg case of non-ovoviviparous sharks. It's a kangaroo-like pouch in which the female deposits her eggs, or ova, with her aptly named ovipositor, an egg-laying organ which is shaped a little like a dong. Incidentally, if, for some strange reason, you ever need to sex a cricket, look at its rear end. Males are two-pronged, whereas females have three, and yes, the third central prong is her ovipositor, used for laying her fertilized eggs in the ground. Once the seahorse eggs are laid in the male, he fertilizes them internally with his navy baby gravy, and they develop in this pouch until they're ready to be delivered. At this point, the male undergoes contractions, I'm not making this up, and delivers potentially hundreds of tiny new seahorses into the world in a process which looks like sneezing, if your boogers had teeny little horse heads and prehensile tails. To be honest, seahorse sex could fill an entire video on its own, but it won't be this one. Still, I think it's worth passing along that research conducted in 2006 indicates that seahorses of the hippocampus genus will flirt with as many as 25 potential sexual partners in a day, and that more than a third of their sexual encounters were same-sex pairings. It seems the flirty fish are, in the words of the Times correspondent Simon de Brussel, promiscuous, flighty, and more than a little bit gay. Or, as Dr. Bones McCoy once said of the Tribbles, it seems they're bisexual, reproducing at will. And I kind of love that for them. In summary, seahorses are queer. From their snorkel-snooted horseheads with chameleon eyes to their fluttery water wings, marsupial man-pouches, and prehensile posteriors, these little guys might just be some of the weirdest fish in the sea. It's no wonder they're called the horse-like sea monster in Greek, the dragon's bastard child by the Japanese, and the chameleon of the sea by me. They're so bizarre, even by fish standards, that I've heavily based an alien race on them in my sci-fi comedy novel, so keep an eye out for that in 15 to 20 years. In the meantime, though, thanks for watching, and have a fascinating day. Alright, marine biologists, I'm willing to cut a deal with y'all. I'll exclusively call starfish sea stars going forward, and I'll even call jellyfish sea jellies if you want, but you have to acknowledge horsefish, or better yet chameleon fish, as a valid synonym for a seahorse. I mean, technically speaking, sea stars and jellies are echinoderms and cnidarians, respectively, not true biological fish by any stretch of the term, but seahorses belong to Actinopterygii, the ray-finned class of bony fish, probably the most true fish-like fish in the sea.